Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from 4/12/22. An amended version was handed out. Did everyone have a chance to take a peek at it and review?
What was changed?
Do you know what was changed?
Yes, the change was that under the BHS update, standing agenda item C, it was changed so that it says that we know that repairing or replacing the HVAC system will trigger the 30/30 compliance rule according to the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board regulations. That it was written as if it were our rule or something earlier, so that was the change.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Okay. So would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as we've just seen revised?
So moved.
And a second.
Okay, I'm going to take roll call since Ms. Monaco is remote. I'll go ahead. Are you in favor, Ms. Musardo?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so 5-0-0. Next item is approval of the warrant. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll take roll. Ms. Musardo?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so 5-0-0. Okay, we will have public participation, and attendees are allowed to obviously attend versus in person and also via WebEx. Just a friendly reminder that you're limited to 3 minutes. And is there anyone in the audience who would like to come up and speak or have a question? Okay, anybody on WebEx? No. All right, well, we'll move on to the next item then. All righty, next item is information reports. Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is town meeting week, I'm not sure we have too many, but I would like to thank the Ways and Means School Subcommittee who spent many hours the last couple months working with all of us to on the school budget, and then the entire Ways and Means Committee. And finally, last night, I'd really like to thank town meeting for approving our operating budget for fiscal '23. So as they have proven year after year, this community is supportive of schools and providing the resources that we need to continue and for programs that you'll soon hear about this evening. So again, it's with gratitude of all the people who contribute to our budget getting passed. So that, and again, I just want to thank Nicole for preparing all the documentation and the detail that's needed as we get through the 240 or so pages of the budget document. So Nicole, thank you. And I know your team. Thank your team.
Yeah, thank you as well, and thank you, Dr. Conti, and thank you to the town as well. Any subcommittee reports? Ms. Simon?
Yes, the Youth and Family Services Board met, and I don't have a lot of details to report, but they were able, new staff who came on this year has been working out really well. They have some interns they've got set up for next year. And there continues to be a lot of really good work between the school district and the Youth and Family Services Department, as well as the Police Department, which has a crisis counselor and a substance abuse counselor. And there's a lot of really good work going on in town to try to make sure that people aren't going to fall through the cracks who have mental health issues, and in particular for families and youth. So that's the report.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Anyone else have any updates? Mr. Foss?
Yes, I attended my first meeting of the Recreation Commission last night and met all the gentlemen and ladies that are involved. I think it's going to be very interesting, and I look forward to continuing the work that Tom had done with them, and hopefully I can do as good work as he did. And the second item is Town DEIC does meet tomorrow, even though it is town meeting night 2. It's at 6, and we plan to keep it around 40 minutes, so we can still make it to town meeting. But if anyone's interested, the WebEx information is on the town website.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. And I was unable to make the last transportation subcommittee or meeting. And Ms. Basardo, were you able to make it? Is there anything important to report?
Putting me on the spot. Yeah, I think we discussed safe routes a little bit, which we can get to on that agenda item. And really, so the transportation committee is a temporary committee, so I think we're kind of trying to reevaluate if we make it a longer term committee, or kind of what the exact role of the transportation committee is. I don't think anything's been decided, but we talked about the dual purpose of, finding transportation for seniors and finding transportation for students. We also heard from some folks in Lexington and what they've been doing for their transportation needs. And they kind of proposed a collaboration with Burlington, because a lot of the seniors from Lexington want to come to the mall, things like that. Seniors from Burlington might want to go downtown Lexington. So we might have some synergies there. So we're going to continue talking about those.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate the update. And I'm assuming Brooke has a conflict, or maybe I'm wrong. Is she able, she's not attending tonight?
I don't believe she's online, Jeff.
Brooke, are you online? Okay, so no student update either. Ways and Means is next. Roger Riggs?
Nothing, thank you.
That was easy. We're going to zip right through, haha. So next is Learning. Dr. Conti?
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to invite up Ms. Carrie Purchase, and she can introduce her team. We're joined here by Barbara Sturdivant, John Walsh, and John Carroll. And I think National History Day is something that you all look forward to. And again, it's been another outstanding year. So, Carrie, I'll let you do the intro and introduce your team, and then hopefully we'll hear from them and some of the students.
So thank you for having us here tonight. It's exciting to be here with students in person to celebrate their successes. So I don't have much to say except that National History Day was a club that this committee supported starting in 2018, 2019. And has grown exponentially in a short amount of time, and despite the challenges of COVID. So our first year, we had students who went to the nationals that were actually in Washington, D.C. And this year, we have students who have earned that as well, and it's virtual this year. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Barbara Sturdivant, Mr. John Carroll, and Mr. John Walsh, who are the advisors of the group. And to say that they are just the advisors is an understatement. The number of hours that they put into supporting students both at the building. I think there are some nights that the custodians might be asking them to leave, but also the support through editing papers and documentaries and other things. So the time and effort that this group of educators has put into this is pretty amazing. I also want to point out and share the success not only of the students, who they'll promote, but Mrs. Sturdivant was recognized as the Teacher of the Year by the National History Day as well. And again, I think it's credit goes to the team, but I think that this was her kind of idea, bringing it forward and making it happen. So, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Sturdivant, National History Day co-coordinator and 6th grade social studies teacher at MSMS.
My name is John Walsh, also a co-coordinator. So Barbara does most of the heavy lifting.
John Carroll, 7th grade language arts, and yeah, she's the brains of the operation. We're just
So, well, the club has grown exponentially. The first year we did it, we had, I want to say, 15 or so students, and I was asking for help just to have more people up there. And this year, we had almost 40 students at MSMS, and we don't want to forget that we also had almost 10 students who worked independently on projects at BHS, who are former MSMS competitors, some who had qualified to nationals, some who had competed before COVID hit and made everything go virtual. So this year, the theme was debate and diplomacy, successes, failures, and consequences. Every year, National History Day assigns a theme, and students in grades 6 through 12 get to choose a topic of their own interests. And that's really exciting because it gives them a chance to excel in what they would like to do. Want to talk about what kinds of topics they can have?
Yeah, and one of the great things is that we really get to see what these kids' interests are outside of school. Like, you know, I get to see them in my own classes as well as these two in theirs, and, you know, they follow the curricula, but, you know, we have projects all over the place from, you know, rock and roll music and anime being brought into the United States and the way that, you know, you deal with the two different cultures. We've had projects on, well, just looking at the other ones we have here, the Electoral College, which, as we know, has been an ongoing debate in the country. You've got your Salem witch trials.
We had the
none.
wax.
Yep, the women,
we'll
as how women
introduce all
serve
of
in
them.
the armed forces. And then not only do they get to pick their topic, but they get to pick the way in which they deliver their information. Whether it's your more traditional writing a paper, making a nice display like you would see, you'd think of like a science fair, but it's like a history fair. And then, you know, we've had kids make websites in the past. We've had a lot of success with documentaries, individual acting performances. There's a lot of different ways, and the kids really, you know, they take their own projects and run with it.
Anything you wanted to add on? And we should also say that students can work in individually or in groups of up to 5 students. So this year, over half of our students who competed at the district contest, which was virtual, moved on to the state competition, which was held in Winchester about a month ago or so. And we were just so thrilled to hear our names called so many times. It's really an amazing rush to just keep hearing it. So they're not here today, but we had quite a few honorable mentions. These are 3rd and 4th place finishers. And if any of the 1st and 2nd place finishers in their categories cannot go on to nationals, they are the first ones in to take their place. So we had one group documentary at the high school who placed honorable mention. We had an individual documentary, an individual exhibit, group exhibit, and an individual paper also placed honorable mention. Also, we had quite a few special awards that were given out, including Best in Maritime History and Best in Massachusetts History. So now for the really exciting part, the amazing students sitting behind us. These people have been working since October, and we'd like to introduce them to you and tell you their topic and see if they have anything to say. We can't guarantee they'll say anything,
They're
though.
usually not this shy.
So we have 8th grader Dana Gotti, 8th grader Tay Sanmun, and 7th grader Zach Titus. And they did a group documentary called You Can't Stop Rock and Roll on Music Censorship. And something very exciting about theirs is what's the coolest thing about yours? We're going to put you on the spot. Speak real loud.
We had a lot of interviews.
They've had a lot of interviews with some really well-known bands.
Really known, yeah, we got the drummer from Extreme, and we got the DJ for the radio, Rock 92.9 here.
And they have an interview tomorrow.
With someone from the Steve Miller Band.
Wow, excellent.
Yes, so that's one of the most amazing things about History Day is people who are willing to help. And so they placed 2nd for their group documentary. We also have another 2nd place winner, Giuliana Mcgrane. You want to say what hers was?
Giuliana made a solo documentary, and that was the project on anime, kind of Japanese culture and the way that it's brought into the United States. Put in an incredible amount of work, and believe it or not, did almost the entire project on a cell phone.
Which, not easy. Like, I don't know how she did it. She's editing video on an iPhone. Like,
By
really.
the time I was done with my 2nd draft, I was getting like little messages that I couldn't send to text or anything.
We have 2nd place individual essay winner, Brenton, who wrote about the Electoral College, and he recently received an email back from
Representative Seth Moulton.
who gave his insights on his thoughts on the Electoral College. And last, and incredibly impressive, we have 8th graders Lucy Clement and Brianna Thomas, who are our only 2 returning students from 2 years ago, and they won first place for the entire state on their group exhibit on the WACS Pioneers for Women in the Military. And they did a 6-foot-tall exhibit complete with little green Army women. Army women. So we are just so incredibly proud of them, and they have one more week to submit their final entries that will be sent off virtually to the national contest. We wish we could be in the University of Maryland in Washington, D.C., but we are so excited that we have so many amazing students this year. So that is the National History Day update. Thanks, guys.
Look like you're happy.
Look like you're happy. Thank you so much, and as always, we really appreciate the support you give us.
Again, Barbara, John, and John, just incredible work. I think personal choice and allowing students to choose topics in the medium in terms of how they deliver it is so important. We need to do more of this and maybe less of the other. So thank you all for showing us how this works best. So you make us look good. Honestly, thank you. Madam Chair, I'm sure you want to compliment the students, but incredible work.
Yeah, very, very impressive. And, congratulations to all of you and to all your teachers who are involved and there to support you. And I could not be more proud of this school district having so many students move on. And congratulations. And, I think it's wonderful you have that opportunity. A lot of the opportunities we didn't have when I was your age. So that's great. Thank you. Do you want to take a photo? Want to try and take a photo? That'd be awesome. Can we take a photo with you all? Who wants to?
Why don't you guys go to them?
One, two, three. One more. Bam. Thank you. Hold on, parents, let me get a Thank you. Sorry if I'm in your way, excuse me.
Thanks for bringing that camera around.
Thanks for bringing that picture.
Yeah. I would also like to comment. I have a problem with computer.
No, but I want to start.
Oh, they left. Congratulations, and you did a fabulous job, you guys. You left too soon.
All righty.
That's the mic drop. They just dropped the mic.
Well, again, that was exciting and fun. It's nice to know we can have a little bit of fun once in a while. All right, so next is the Marshall Simon Student Parent Handbook, first reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to invite Ms. Purchase up again. Just wanted to start by saying I think Carrie will give you more of the details, but there is no perfect handbook. It's really meant to be a living document, and the middle school handbook needed to be resuscitated. So, so I think Carrie has spent a lot of time with her school council and other folks resuscitating the middle school school handbook. And so thank you, Carrie, and why don't you provide some of the background and details of that, so.
Thank you. So just to reiterate what Dr. Conti said, this is a work in progress. We certainly followed a process over the last few years. It is the handbook is a legal document that we need to have in place by regulation. We started looking at it my first year, which was the 18-19 school year. It had been a lofty goal to really give it the attention it deserved that year, and it didn't quite get finished that year. So we continued into the next year, and then COVID happened. So I want to recognize that this has been a long time coming, and believe that we have a document that is a beginning point. We engaged our faculty. Last year, we would send out sections of the document for comment, and we also would work with our school council. This year, we had a draft, and we did a page turn with the school council for a chunk of it. It got, a little long, and we needed to honestly get a document to the school committee so that we could have that foundational piece. The school council did vote at our last meeting to move that forward to you now. And I want to fully recognize that there's no perfect handbook. This handbook is far from perfect. And I think it's a starting place. And what the school council discussed was identifying portions of the handbook going forward to really spend time on, and making sure that it's representing, kind of who we are, what we need, and then also kind of the procedural pieces that need to be in that. So again, present this to you today. It's for first reading. I welcome feedback, certainly. I also think that at some point in time, getting some legal advice and making sure that we have all the components that need to be there is going to be another important part. And know that from this point forward, we will be coming to you every year with a handbook with changes. So I think if we were to go through and kind of highlight the changes and say, like, this was what was there and this is what's there now, I think it's too extensive of a rewrite at this point. But going forward, if we were looking at the language around homework, we would present what the old language was, what the new language was, and then the reason for the changes. So that's really our intent. And we just need to get a solid working handbook in place so that we can move forward.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work on revamping this. I'm sure it was not an easy task.
So it was not, and I really can't take the credit. Mrs. Chen Fine, Mr. Murphy were kind of key in that, and certainly the school council and then the faculty. So it was a collaborative approach to writing it, and I hand it to you.
Well, thank you. And again, I think it was important to get feedback from the teachers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I had a question. I couldn't get the link to the acceptable use policy, but I believe I've seen it. Is there anything about social media policy anywhere?
So I would say, I guess my question would be in what regards?
Well, I see you have like a cell phone policy bit, but I wasn't sure if there was like acceptable use of just recommendations for students, what you post on social media, pictures of school, anything like that.
So I would say that under the bullying section where it talks about cyberbullying,
Yeah.
there's references to kind of things that happen outside of school that
Okay.
impact the school environment. So does it specifically say social media? No, but I think that it is, certainly if things are happening online through social media that are impacting the school environment, then we have cause for action. It gets a little tricky sometimes because it's a very gray area. And it's something that I think that as a district, we need to continue to think about and advise. And I think it's a community discussion as well. So the hope is that if cell phones are off and away, then kids aren't accessing social media during the school day. but the reality of it is if they have cell phones and they have the cellular data, like they can. So I think that those are the pieces where we need to address. I think I was speaking with one of the elementary principals today, and 12 years ago, it was very easy to monitor in a middle school, monitor cell phone use because it was the students with cell phones were in the minority. Social media was still Facebook then, and so the world has changed. Kids are getting access to these things younger and younger, so I think that we need to really focus our conversations around education with kids and families, because I think if we're I'll get on my soapbox a little bit, but like if we're giving them access, their brains aren't necessarily ready to deal with that. We know that when someone's behind a screen, they're more apt to say or share something that is inappropriate or hurtful. And not intentionally, it's just that quick kind of piece. So I do think that we need to look at that. And certainly the handbook piece addresses the bullying piece. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think we
thank
need
you.
to work on that as a part of our bullying policy probably too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I want to thank you and congratulate you and all the people who worked on it, because it is a massive undertaking to update a handbook after however many years. And I think it is I understand it's a beginning and there are things that will change over time, but I think it is a really good document to work with. I do have a couple, this is a first reading, I do have a couple of questions and suggestions that we don't have to go over everything, but there's a reference to, how parents can be in touch around using Aspen and Google Classroom, and perhaps there'd be a link to something that would give parents instructions on how to use Aspen and Google Classroom, that kind of thing. I also was really noticing, and especially with the restorative justice work on the agenda tonight, that the entire discipline section doesn't mention restorative justice. And I understand that it isn't yet something it's something we're working on and we're going to be getting in, and it may not be the right thing to put in this year, but I do hope that will become, because what's in here is important, and I'd like to see us adding the restorative justice piece to the discipline issues. The other issue for me is I actually was really fortunate to work with some 8th graders last week who are doing their civic action project. Is that the name of it? That all 8th graders take civics now. And every 8th grader has to do a project. And they invited me in to talk about religious observances and school days and school policies. And what we figured out is that there should be a comment in the handbook about students are, entitled to their religious observances, and it is in there. It's very clearly stated under excused absences that religious observances are. And what I don't know if it's something you could do this year, but perhaps it is something that could be added to it either this year or next year to comment on the kinds of accommodations. So, for example, many holidays, like the Jewish holidays and like a lot of the Muslim holidays, happen in the evening with the family. It's the whole evening, it's the next day, and students can't just show up the next day with homework. And being sure that, or have it be prepared for a test. Well, they might be in school that day, but they may not be able to be prepared. And so I'd like to have that be part of the handbook. And in particular, I think there's families who may have been in this country for generations, having a different religious observance than the traditional calendar. But I also think we have a lot of families who may be relatively new immigrants to this country, may not even realize that their children are entitled to have an excused absence to stay home for Eid or whatever observance it may be, whether it's something else too. It's a tricky thing. We who've been in this country for longer are more familiar with certain things are more the norm. I've been trying to educate myself about holidays that I don't observe, and yet the more I learn, the more I realize that every family, every different parts of religions observe differently, every family observes differently. I've heard that Diwali is 3 days long, and I've heard that it's 5 days long. And so it depends on how people observe, and I want to be sure that our policies are open and flexible enough so that people can observe what they feel is important to them, in a way that we can include them and have them feel included and that they belong in our culture here. So I had a couple other little details that I would maybe pass on in writing to you, Dr. Conti and Ms. Purchase. And one might even be a typo, so I don't need to talk about
Probably.
those. But like I said, it's clearly a really important place to be starting from, and it addresses, I think, all the important issues. So thank you for all that.
No, thank you. I guess my question would be, is that something that you would like me to add into for the next reading? Or is there, I think that the handbook is an important piece, and I also think that it's even once it's up on the website, it's not going to be the first place people go to necessarily for information on that. So when we had met with the students, we had talked about doing kind of a letter at the beginning of the year. So that might be a first step in addressing that, and then looking at including it in next year's revision. So I would ask for guidance on that.
Dr. Conti?
Again, I think it's just important to have a handbook in place, so, just because we haven't had one, so, all good ideas, Ms. Simon, so, but I think we can probably make the adjustment, so, again, my advice would be to, we'll get feedback, and hopefully we can get a vote at our next meeting, and therefore you can have a handbook in place, and then have it ready for the fall, really.
Okay.
And through the chair, I do think, not everything has to be spelled out in a handbook. I think that if the procedures that we use are that families are reminded in the beginning of the school year that this is how they can, arrange for their child to observe whatever, I think that those are also good ways to work with families and communicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Thank you, Dr. Conti, and thank you.
Thank you.
Just before you vacate the premises, I received a disturbing email today, or yesterday. Just because you mentioned Jen Chen Fine has been asked to serve as the Watertown Middle School principal. So again, it's with very mixed feelings because want to congratulate her, but I'm sort of angry at Superintendent Galston a little bit for stealing her. I think opportunities like that are a reflection of Jen's hard work and abilities and talents, obviously, but Carrie, I just wanted to say it's also a reflection of your leadership, and I think when someone who works for you moves on in their career, that's a positive reflection of you, your school, and your team. So again, please pass on our congratulations and our gratitude for her hard work here. I'll obviously see her in person, but I wanted to inform the committee. Again, Jen is going to be the middle school principal for the Watertown Public Schools.
I will definitely pass that along, and it's been a rough couple of days because I'm very excited for her and this opportunity, and she will be missed. So, but we'll come together with a process and in terms of the hiring piece and go forward from that. But I'm extremely proud of her. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, the next item is Dyslexia Guidelines in Burlington presentation.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to, I'll introduce this with Mr. Larkin as well. Renee is our Director of Literacy for the district. She does work actually pre-K through 12, and works in the instruction office with Patrick's team. There's been lots of conversations about the Dyslexia Guidelines that have been released from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And we just wanted to present a brief. This is going to be a brief. We're not getting into too many details. And I think Renee will present that well. Just a couple things, just these are guidelines, not regulations, so I just want to stress that. And Renee will also stress that these are for regular education, even though they were released through the special ed branch of DESE. This is not about special education or specialized instruction. So with that, again, Renee, thank you for coming this evening. And we will get into some reading guideline conversation.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Bob. So the dyslexia guidelines, and I think it's important that we consider them to be guidelines, were in fact brought up in the fall of 18, passed in January of 19. So we've been dealing with them for a little bit. Again, the big topic is, what is dyslexia? I think when I was in the classroom, dyslexia was a word you couldn't say about students. They said it was a medical diagnosis. Things have changed. That is not true anymore. SLDs, or specific learning disabilities, about 5 to 15% of SLDs are actually dyslexia, students with dyslexia. So it's a more common term now, but there is good news about dyslexia, and there's good news for Burlington. We are in a very good situation. So just really quickly, I shared a PowerPoint with you, but dyslexia is a specific learning disability characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition, typically with poor spelling and decoding abilities, so the ability to sound out and read fluently, which of course then impacts vocabulary and comprehension later on. So I put the, Bob, sorry. The next act is sort of the act for relative to students with dyslexia, the actual guideline from the state. And again, as Dr. Conti said, these are regular ed guidelines, not special education laws. So while we are following them, they are strictly guidelines. So there are 3 purposes to these guidelines. One is to provide a set of screening guidelines for all students, so pre-K-5, a framework for intervention for students at risk of dyslexia and other learning disabilities, and then this comprehensive resources for intervention to provide students with the appropriate interventions that they actually need. So dyslexia can be categorized into 3 ways. There's a phonological subtype. So I'm not going to read these slides to you, but just so that you know, phonemic awareness is basically the blending, manipulating, and deleting of phonemes. And phonemes are sounds. So basically, if I say k, a, t, you can blend those sounds and say cat. If I say the word cat without the k, you can say at. So this manipulating of phonemes is oral. It happens orally. It's not phonics. There are no letters involved. There are no symbols involved. It's just oral phonemic awareness. So that's one of the subtypes. There's this phonological subtype. There's also this rapid naming speed subtype of dyslexia, which is when students have trouble with any sort of rapid automatized naming, whether it's letters or sounds or symbols, pictures, anything like that. So when students have a hard time with that, they call it RAN, then that could be a signal that there is a flag for dyslexia. It doesn't mean they have dyslexia, it's just sort of a flag. Or they could have both, which is the double deficit. So they could have both of those subtypes, the phonological and the naming speed. So, and feel free to ask questions if they come up, because sometimes if you're like me, you'll forget halfway through. So basically, what is screening? One of the guidelines is that we screen all students. And so what is supposed to happen with screening is we're supposed to decide 3 things. Who's at risk, how significant is the risk, and which skill areas need support. And we always start with the lowest common denominator when we're talking about weaknesses or need. So the lowest denominator for reading is phonological awareness, which then moves to phonics, and then it moves to vocabulary or sight words and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to get into all that, but basically the Massachusetts guidelines are telling us we cannot wait to have this wait and fail framework anymore. And in Burlington, this is where we're fortunate, we have been not waiting to fail for a very long time. So we've been addressing a lot of these factors from pre-K on, for the past, since we had RTI, 12 years. So since response to intervention was started here when Dr. Conti came, we call it response to intervention. Other people call it MTSS, which is multi-tiered support system. They're pretty much interchangeable. But anyway, the avoid, wait to fail framework, we want to make sure that people know that risk factors for dyslexia can be found prior to formal instruction, which is the whole oral rehearsal of the phonological awareness. A lot of our students in kindergarten come in not knowing how to read, but we're still teaching them phonological awareness from day one. So it's avoiding this wait and fail. Where screening is critical for efficient intervention, we want to make sure we get them intervention as soon as possible. And also the last one, which is screening is not an eligibility determination. So back to the special ed thing, just because a student fails the screener does not necessarily make them eligible for special ed. Because what these guidelines are doing is telling us that we can provide intervention, and with intervention, the brain can actually rewire itself and form the connections that it needs to form in order to have the language processing part of our brain connect with the visual processing part of the brain.
If I
Yes.
could, through the chair, make a comment. I think, I just want to add, there's many people here and who are listening who know this. But I think part of what's important for me in understanding that we don't want to wait to fail and that we need to screen, and it doesn't mean a student has a learning disability, is that reading is something that's not inherent
That's right.
in the human brain.
That's right.
So to compare that, when children are born and grow up in any society, their brains are able to learn language. They listen, they hear, they start talking.
Yep.
Nobody teaches them to start talking. It doesn't matter what language, it doesn't matter what the tones are in the language. They just learn to speak and to understand what people are saying to them.
That's right.
But reading is not something that the human brain is wired for. And so we need to instruct students to learn to read.
Right.
And what I didn't know a lot about the screening part, but what this is saying is there's some ways to tell which kids are going to have a harder time because of the way their brains are wired.
That's right.
And so we can intervene earlier and make it easier for them to learn to read later.
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of add that
Yeah.
because for people who don't have a special ed background and don't have a reading background, it all makes sense. But to me, what makes sense is that it's in this context of how kids learn to read.
That's right.
And I just wanted to add that.
Thank
So
you very
Thank
much,
you,
Ms.
and
Simon.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
no,
you
no.
did tell us to make comments.
Yeah,
so.
no, absolutely. And again, like you said, we've been using language for over 5 million years, so it's become part of our DNA. And we've only been using literature and literacy for about, less than 5,000 years. So it is not part of our DNA yet. But in 5 million years, it probably will be. Our brains will be hardwired. So again, our brains there's a lot of plasticity to our brains, so they can be taught to change with the right instruction and right intervention. So having said that, back to the screening part of it, which is what Ms. Simon brought up, kindergarten screening, we happen to use the Dibbles 8th edition for our K1 universal screener. We've been using the Dibbles platform since just about when I got here 17 years ago. So Dibbles is not a new tool for us. We've always been screening our students with Dibbles in K1. We assess them 3 times a year. The guidelines is twice a year. We assess them 3 times a year. And it has multiple tools and multiple subtests. One of them is letter naming, which is your rapid automatized naming. One is nonsense word fluency. Again, sound recognition. I'm not going to bore people with reading this slide. However, we do in kindergarten assess 3 times a year, not twice. We also have our own curriculum-based formative assessment, which is our phonological screener. That is not a screener a screener that is DESE approved. It's a formative curriculum-based assessment that we use in Burlington, and we actually do that between 3 to 5 times a year for our students. It's a real quick screener that we use. So kindergarten, Dibbles, 8th edition, first grade, 3 times a year, Dibbles 8th edition as well. Again, assesses all the same ones, but we add in reading fluency and a little bit of comprehension to the mix of foundational skills, which are the prior ones. So for second grade, we also screen our second graders. In second grade, our screener switches to iReady, which is an approved guideline screener. There are a couple of added assessments that have to be done with the iReady in order for it to be fully approved by the Dyslexia Guidelines. But what we do with iReady is we screen all of our we screen K 2 to 8 now, but we screen the second graders, and anyone who comes up with a red flag on iReady is automatically placed in the Dibble system and dibbled. So while, I know it sounds a little funny, so while the Dibbles screener is not for all second graders at this point, it is for anyone who has been red flagged for iReady at this point. We are having conversations about possibly using Dibbles for all second graders going into the next school year, 23-24 school year, but not for this year. We're going to continue with. I did the numbers today. We actually have about 25% of our second graders in the Dibble system currently being dibbled. So it's a significant amount of students. We dive deep. We dive deeper than we usually have to, just to double check. We don't want anyone to fall through the cracks. So those are the 3 grades that we really consider. Just so that you know, pre-K also does some screening. They use the PELI, which is the Dibbles pre-K screener. So Deborah Clark and her team down at the BECC use the PELI, which is also a Dibbles screener. So after their students are screened, what do we do with the data? It's not useful if we don't do anything with it. So we have data meetings. Our classroom teachers, our reading specialists, our math specialists all meet, and then we have data meetings with the district team 3 times a year. So what do we do with the data meetings? We basically make sure our students are assigned to the correct tier. Tier 1 core, Tier 2 is core plus intervention, which is usually 5 days times 30 minutes a week. And then Tier 3 would be core plus Tier 2 plus Tier 3, which is an additional 45 to 120 minutes a week of intervention. So that's one of the functions of the data meetings. Other ones are to make sure we're appropriately instructing them in the correct area. What is the weakness? What are we instructing them on? And then also to arrange the groups. And we progress monitor our students in Tier 2 every 2 weeks, and if they're in Tier 3, we progress monitor them every week. So again, these are the guidelines set forth by the state. Burlington's been doing this, it's been in this system for a few years now, where our data meetings come up, we progress monitor, we relook at data, we move students up, down, in and out of tiers. If they move to Tier 3, they automatically go to problem solving, which we invite parents to. So there is a process to this whole screening, which leads to RTI, which is another presentation, I think. So of course, there are other considerations for the dyslexia guidelines, and that's to make sure that core instruction is solid. And I think we've tightened up our core curriculum well in the past couple of years. We've always included foundations, which is what the dyslexia guidelines will tell you, that you need a strong phonics program, and foundations is one. We've also added Heggerty, which is a phonological awareness curriculum, to K1. And next year, we will add it to our reading support classrooms for second grade. They just came out with the second grade curriculum, Heggerty, so we'll add that to the curriculum. Again, what we have is great, but there's always new things. We can revise, we change, we add to, we take away as new things come out. So what does targeted instruction look like at Tier 2 and 3? It looks like phonemic awareness interventions, and again, that can be very, very targeted into just manipulating sounds, just syllabication, just initial sound fluency. It can be very, very targeted, and then it goes right through reading comprehension. Again, I'm not going to read those. There are considerations for ELs with the guidelines that, fortunately, I work closely with Carrie Lamprey, and we have these discussions all the time about what level are ELs? Is this an appropriate assessment for them? Same thing with special ed. Is this an appropriate assessment for students who have executive functioning or issues with ADHD issues? So Christina Ciccolini and I also have conversations about timed assessments, but dyslexia guideline, the dyslexia screeners are timed. That's the whole point of them. They are timed. So the considerations for ELs obviously is, what has the student's schooling been like? Has it been interrupted? All this we take that into consideration based on the scores of the screener.
And I actually did have a question.
Yeah.
So how did COVID over the past couple of years affect the ability to evaluate the students? And, do you feel that there's a little catching up to do, or just curious?
Yeah, so the assessing of students continued like clockwork, because it can be done, even our remote school last year was able to assess our students without any issues. The intervention was less reliable over the past year or so because of the substitutes, the teachers being absent, those kinds of things, students being absent. So I think that the inconsistencies actually laid more in the intervention part of it than the actual assessment part of it. So, but there's probably some catching up to do.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Sacker, you mentioned, thank you also for this presentation.
Yeah.
It's very informative. But you mentioned the 25% of second graders that get dibbled.
Yes.
Is that a normal number, or is that an increase that you've seen in the past year or so?
It's typical.
Typical,
It's
okay.
about 20, usually around 20%, so not,
You haven't seen a rise?
we haven't
because-
seen a
okay.
rise, no.
All right, thanks.
I will say that our current second and third graders as a whole are probably, they were the ones that got hit the hardest in elementary school by COVID. But our teams at schools are working really hard and diligently trying to give them the support that they need. So we're making up for some lost time. So again, I can, when a student doesn't respond to interventions, what do we do? There's multiple things that we can do, but again, I just need people, one of my goals tonight is to just remind people that, that your brain can be rewired to learn. So because you're flagged for dyslexia, in the younger grades does not necessarily mean, doesn't mean you don't have it, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be fixed with the right interventions. And I think that we're in a good position here to be doing that, providing those interventions to our students. So the last slide basically is what's next. So again, RTI, MTSS framework's in place here in Burlington. Our core has been tightened over the past few years. Our universal screener is already in place. We have research-based interventions in place, but again, we continue to revise those each year. There's early intervention for case students identified on DIBELS in place already. I think that's a huge piece to these guidelines. The things that will be new next year, there'll be an early literacy parent survey for students. In grades K to 2, it will be sent home in the fall for parents. It will be a Google form, so it can be easily translated. It's important for us to know that there is about a 50% chance if a first-degree relative has dyslexia that a student will have dyslexia. So it's important for us to know about people who have history of family dyslexia. So that's one of the questions on the screener. And then the professional development that we all need, teachers, staff, support staff, special ed, everybody sort of around the guidelines in dyslexia in general. So does anybody have any other questions?
Again, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The presentation was wonderful
Great.
and very informative.
Good.
And anyone else have any questions? Ms. Massardo?
I just, I got some feedback prior to this meeting that parents either don't believe or weren't aware that the dyslexia screening is happening. I mean, I have a kindergartner and I'm familiar with Dibbles, but I also probably didn't know that that was a dyslexia screening.
Yep.
I think, is there a way to you said we can say dyslexia now, right? Is there a way to maybe just kind of get the word out a little bit, like this is a dyslexia screening?
Yep.
Just, because I know I received this, again, it was at a teacher conference, so the teacher was walking me through it.
Sure.
But I think you walk away and you're like, wow, he named 72 sounds in 60 seconds. And like, I don't think you kind of put those pieces
Right,
together.
Right. I think that, again, back to the teacher professional development, I think that we've been using Dibbles as a universal screener, so they haven't been thinking about it as a dyslexia screener. And I think that's an education that we all sort of just need to move forward with, that it is an approved dyslexia screener based on the DESI. So again, yes, I hear that. We can absolutely start using the term. They're going to continue to use it as our universal screener, but it's also, it's a twofold, and that's what the DESI really wanted you to be able to use things you already had. Almost, they didn't want you to have to go and do brand new things, because to have to learn new assessments really takes, it's a long time to implement new assessments. So I think that that's certainly just a communication piece that we can certainly deal with, yes. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Simon, did you have your hand up?
I was going to ask a little bit what Mr. Foss had asked, and so you're seeing maybe a little bit of increased need in the younger children, but
Yeah.
it's not too much
I think what we're seeing is
because
that.
of COVID.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that the number of students maybe hasn't increased, but the skills are lower than what we would want them to be. So, does that make sense? So maybe in
Well,
second.
yeah, they've missed out on
Exactly.
instruction.
So in second grade, we're typically at this time of year working on fluency, but we have a lot of students still in phonics in second grade. Doesn't mean that the number of students have increased, it just, the skill is a little lower.
Thank you very much
You're
for all of this, and all the teachers who do this. I did attend a data meeting once a few years ago, and, I mean, clearly everybody is really doing this and making it making it work for our students. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Monaco, I know you're remote. I can't see a hand up or anything. I just want to double check you're okay. All set?
Yep, all set.
All right, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, Renee, thank you very much. I think it was very informative. Again, a couple things I want to stress again is these are guidelines that the state is actually coming closer to where Burlington already has been in terms of our structures. Mr. Foss, you asked a Fontes and Pinnell question, I believe it was a couple meetings ago. Again, we utilize the books. Our framework is our framework. So we're not following the Fontes and Pinnell curriculum, but we like some of their text in their books. So again, we're using tools in this particular framework that that you were seeing, and
Those books are usually used in more reading group situations as opposed to, they're not for intervention necessarily.
okay. So I know you had asked that question.
Oh, yes, there's a hand. Okay.
Grace on WebEx, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, hi, thank you. My name is Grace Januszewicz, and I just wanted to ask about the reading interventions and if they're being evidence-based or if they're just kind of created individually. You know, there's a lot of research to show that if we know children are at risk for dyslexia, like you said, they're very plastic, but they need to have the right intervention or it's not very helpful. Like, for instance, using LLI has been found to not be effective in the long term, and rather using Orton Gillingham, Wilson, Lips, things like that. Do we have reading specialists trained in these, and what kind of evidence-based interventions are being used?
So the evidence-based research, interventions that are being used currently are more Lexia, Read Naturally, Florida Center for Reading Research, those types of interventions, as well as iReady interventions, Dibbles, M-Class has their own interventions that are also research-based. The Lips, the Orton Gillingham, the Wilson are special ed tools. They are not in the regular ed, which is what our RTI process is. Our RTI process is Gen Ed. So those tools are for students who are in special ed typically.
Thanks. Can I just ask a follow-up question? How
Sure.
long could it potentially take a child who's identified on the screener as possibly being at risk for dyslexia to actually making it to special education to get that type of intervention like Orton Gillingham Wilson that is what would be prescribed for someone with dyslexia?
It varies based on each individual student. It would really depend on the scores, how fast the growth is being made, how quickly growth is being made, and what have they gone to tier 2, tier 3, have they gone through the process? It can be as quick for some students as 8 to 10 weeks, and it can be a little bit longer for other kids who are making adequate progress and just need a little more time. And I think that's part of the guidelines. The part of the guidelines is to provide the time that students need to help rewire the brain, so not jumping to special ed too fast if the process is being followed appropriately.
And again, I think the frequency of progress monitoring means that we're not waiting.
We're not.
And then I would also say with this process, there's no anonymous students, especially at the
Right.
elementary level. We know every individual student and what they need, and oftentimes that instruction is being targeted individually. I think the key here is progress. If progress isn't being made, we don't keep doing the same thing.
No.
We would try other interventions, and then that's what would trigger more specialized instruction, some of the tools that were named
That's right.
just a few minutes ago.
That's right.
Thank you. Another hand up?
Ms. Monaco?
Oh, Ms. Monaco. Hello.
Hi, everyone. This really is a question, I think, for Dr. Conti. I would like to know many more specifics about the special ed version of this, about how many people we have that are certified and at what level in Wilson, Orton, Gillingham, Lips, etc. So it's a question for another meeting. And I'm not requesting a presentation. I'm requesting information to know what we really have available in-house to provide for children who do have special needs and do really need these programs. So I just wanted to say that and hope to get the info at another meeting.
Through the chair, Mrs. Monaco, of course, we can provide that information. And again, I just want to make sure that we stress again that this was the regular ed part of the Dyslexia Guidelines. And then for the students who don't respond, again, we know who they are. Then that gets into the continuum that Mrs. Monaco was discussing. So we can certainly provide more information on that end of the continuum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Monaco. And anyone else have their hand up on WebEx? Nope. Okay, we're all set on that. Any other questions in the room? All right. So again, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Renee. That was a
Thank you.
wonderful presentation, very informative, and appreciate your time and effort you put into it. Okay. Next on the agenda is the draft school calendar, second reading. We have two calendars that we were asked to look at and make a decision on. So, Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The two calendars in front of you are identical, except for whether Good Friday is a school day or Good Friday is a non-school day. So my inclination is to present a religiously neutral calendar, so that's why I presented one without Good Friday identified as a holiday. But we did have significant absences this year where we had to cancel, and I know the committee had been discussing that. So we can implement either calendar. We've been working with the Joint Labor Management on the placement of days, and that's why the professional development days are placed on a Thursday. So honestly, at this point, I just need a calendar. So we have agreed to the start dates, so I think we've been able to communicate with parents when school is going to start and to staff when school is going to start, but it'd be nice to have a calendar moving forward.
All right, I'm going to open it up for any questions that we have from the school committee on the calendars, and then we will have to take a vote.
So I'd like
Ms.
to make a
Simon.
motion that we can discuss, that we recommend that we vote to accept adopt the 22-23 school calendar with teachers and students attending school on Good Friday. And after that, if that's seconded, then we can have a conversation about it.
Second.
Okay, anyone want to have a discussion about that? We good?
So I do feel that having a non-religious calendar is the way to go. There are so many different varieties. Our teacher's contract entitles any teacher to take off a day that they need for their religious observances. And there are many other districts that are handling it this way. And I think that we should be trying it again. Hopefully, teachers who know they're going to have a religious holiday would, give advance notice, and I would like to see us stay with this non-religious holiday.
Okay. Yes, hand out in WebEx, and who's it? Oh, Chris, Ms. Monaco. Sorry.
I disagree with Martha, so I won't vote for that calendar. My opinion is that it has nothing to do with religion. It's just that when you have so many teachers and so many children out on a school day, it's a wasted school day. So for practical reasons, I would prefer that we have the calendar where Good Friday is a day off, so that we don't have to every year be looking at whether or not we have to call school off or have, many, many subs. And it is an annual thing. I mean, we can have the calendar have Good Friday on or off each year, because we do this every year. But my vote would only go to the calendar with Good Friday off.
I have a question, Dr. Gotti. And I don't know if you have an answer, and I'm surprised I didn't ask it earlier, but how many years in a row have we had to, like this year, extend the school year because we didn't have enough teachers to teach on Good Friday?
This was the first year?
So, I mean, that to me would make it lean one way or the
Just
other.
my memory, I'm just asking. I believe, I'm looking at Patrick just because I've lost a couple years here, but we originally did this in the spring of '20 when schools were canceled.
We all subbed from central office to cover classrooms because we didn't have enough teachers in some of the schools.
So last year was the first year that we had to cancel school. So we had run it 1 year before, and then COVID was a little bit different because of we had remote instruction, I believe, happening. So I think this year was the first year we made the adjustment to the calendar.
Because we didn't have enough coverage.
Yeah, I didn't feel we had enough coverage, yes.
Okay, all right. But that didn't happen previous to COVID? Okay. Ms. Massardo?
I think this year may have been unique because it was also the Friday before school vacation.
Good comment. Anyone else have any other comments? Mr. Foss, you all set now?
I'll make the comment that I am going to vote to support the religiously neutral calendar. I think that it is logistically might be difficult, but symbolically I think is more important to show that that we want to make it equitable for everyone. And I'm not being very eloquent here, but I think you can get my point.
Okay, thank you. So I guess at this point, we have a motion and a second to go with the,
Chris's hand is up.
yes, it's recommended that motion that the school committee vote to adopt the 2022-2023 school calendar with the teachers and students attending school on Good Friday. And I'm going to take a vote. Ms. Massardo? I'm sorry, there's a hand up. Yes, who now? Oh, Ms. Monaco.
I just wanted to point out that as long as I've been around, it has been a day off until 2 years ago. And we had school that 1 year. It didn't work out very well. In the last 2 years, we had to cancel it. So Again, I'm just being practical. I think we'll end up canceling it every year, so whatever.
Thank you, Ms. Monaco. So I'll go ahead and take a vote. Mrs. Massardo?
This is in favor of having school on Good Friday, correct?
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
correct. Yes. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco?
No.
And I'm going to go with an aye. So it's going to be 410. All right, the next item on the agenda is equity. And Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Porch. Mr. Porch will handle the following agenda items. Thank you.
Sure. Just a couple of quick updates. We have Unified Basketball is one of our items we wanted to highlight. Played, I think, Watertown, was it, last week? And I think Mr. Sullivan and our athletic director were really excited that we won the game. But more importantly, another example of young people coming together and having fun, and a lot of fun. So if you haven't had a chance to go, I would strongly encourage you to look at the calendar and get to one of the games if you can make it. The other item is tomorrow, the DEI Student Advisory group of young people from the high school will be going over to Marshall Simons Middle School to facilitate some restorative justice circles with 8th grade students, along with myself and Mr. Larkin. The high school students are pretty excited about it, as are the 8th graders. And so we're looking forward to that. Tomorrow, we'll be over there pretty much all day. And then let's talk about it. I think the next session is, yeah, let me just get the correct date up here. May 18th, 7 p.m. And the last item is hopefully for the May 24th session here, we'll have the DEI Student Advisory students and the advocacy room students come and share kind of how hard they've worked this year to grow themselves and grow this school district's community around culture. So that's the latest.
Mr. Porch, do we have to pre-register for the Let's Talk About It sessions?
I believe the link is up. Mr. Larkin had the link up.
Yeah, we'll resend it to everybody that's attended, just to make sure. We can do that tomorrow.
I think one time I had to scramble. I was trying to text you and say, hey, what's the link? And so I just want to make sure that I have everything lined up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could send the invite out again to everybody, because I know I haven't been able to make a lot of them, but I try. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. So we've gone through the unified basketball, did we get to the second one too? I think you talked about, you kind of mixed it all together and let me check off everything.
Sorry about that,
Listening to you too
Madam
much.
Chair.
That's
My
okay.
apologies.
And then let's talk about it. And then the next is the proposed school committee equity training dates.
Yes, Madam Chair. Again, with some of the responses, I am going to try to send out a doodle poll just to find dates that work for everybody. I think it's important that everyone is there, so if we can't find dates this time of year, which is very busy, we may push it a little bit, but it is important. The resolution that you all adopted commits the committee to some annual trainings, conversations about equity, and so we're trying to follow through with that resolution. And so again, we'll work to make sure that folks can attend. And I was thinking, along with conversations with Mr. Porch and Mr. Larkin, that some multiple sessions would allow some reflection in between instead of a full day, but we can talk about different formats as well. So it's really trying to work with your busy schedules.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Anyone else want to have any questions about that? Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I'm glad we are moving forward with the training dates. I'm looking forward to that. And I also had another comment under equity. And this time of year, now that our budget has been passed by town meeting, which, thank you again, town meeting, it's really good to be able to move forward. We are going to start posting positions and doing hiring. And in the last couple of years, I've been on a couple of hiring committees with the district, and I know that our HR director, Joanne Faust, has provided some very good training regarding equity. And I just don't know that every hiring committee and every hiring manager, I'll use the term, I mean, every principal or department head or whoever does hiring, I just want to encourage us to be using some, evidence-based procedures. I know that it's being worked on, but I just felt that I needed to say this tonight. I don't expect to know exactly what's happening, but I have been concerned because I do know in the past that individuals who've been doing hiring didn't necessarily take that approach. And if our goal is to hire a diverse staff that supports the equity work that we're doing, then it's important that every hire be done that way. And I'm thankful for the people who are working on these issues, and I appreciate that. And I'm feeling also urgency that we're starting a new round of hiring for anyone who might be, we might have some retirements or, if we are able to hire some of the new positions. I just want to be sure that we don't miss opportunities to do our hiring process in an equitable way that's going to help the district toward these goals. So I just wanted to comment on that.
So thank you, and Madam Chair, just while we're in this section, I'd be remiss, I sort of have a commitment to make sure that I read your equity statement again, just publicly. So again, this is from the school committee. Educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his or her their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child and individual. So again, we're going to be spending lots of time talking about thriving. I think we're, as we move forward, but I just think it's important. I think that statement is connecting to the hiring, and Ms. Simon, I would say there's many who share your sense of urgency. So I think that's there. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next is thriving. Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick's been watching the numbers carefully, so I want to drag Patrick into the conversation. We normally do this at the end of the week, but I thought we should
The COVID update?
do it more frequently this week. So, thanks, Patrick.
Sure. Again, like a lot of the state, we're seeing an increase in numbers. The week before we went on April vacation, we had 18 positive cases in the district. The first week back, we had 65 with a large number at Pine Glen. And this past week, we had 78. And already today, we're at 50 cases and on 2 days into this week. So the numbers continue to go up since April vacation. I don't think we're unique in regards to what's happening in schools in the area. And we just found it. We sent a letter to all families this evening just that they may want to consider a voluntary, again, it's voluntary, not a mandate, wearing of a mask, just if they're concerned about the spread. I think that's where we stand. I talked to Susan Luminell at the Board of Health, and she agreed that made sense to us now to reiterate if people had concerns about the virus that they should wear a mask. And just want to, I don't want to make any snide remarks, but we are got a couple of nice emails from people following the message, so that's always appreciated. Not nice, but it's okay. The key word in the thing was voluntary. So that's all I want to say. And so they can send whatever nasty grams they want, but it's a voluntary choice. And if it makes them feel better, go ahead, because I have a delete button, so it's all good.
Thank you, Mr. Larkin. Anyone have any questions or comments? Ms. Simon?
I want to thank you, the administration, for making that recommendation. I have been noticing that other surrounding towns have also made similar recommendations to their families for mask wearing indoors, and it is voluntary, but I think it is important. The numbers are going up, and there are still people who are vulnerable. And I'm very appreciative that you're taking the health and safety of our students and our families and our teachers very seriously. And families that feel they want to do that will do that, and families that don't won't. But I want to thank you for bringing that out to the community. And, you know, you checked with the Board of Health, and we're looking at a lot of different factors, so I do appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. So let's go on to the next.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, sure.
So, I mean, the recommendation for masks was appreciated, so thank you again. Are there any other recommendations? Like, for example, my son's classroom teacher, she takes pride in eat their snack outside every day of the year, no matter the weather, and he's all jazzed. Oh, we can make it all day, every day, Dad, we can make it. Are we asking teacher, like, any recommendations to school-based administration to eat outside or any, as the weather warms up, I think that might be prudent to ask teachers if they're comfortable to take stuff outside, or are there any discussions about moving lunch outside in certain places?
I think we haven't gotten to that point yet. I mean, we certainly are taking advantage of the nice weather. Teachers get out. You know, some teachers make that, you know, personal decision anyway when the good weather comes. I think we're continuing to monitor the numbers and pay attention to, you know, what they look like. What I heard last week is they expect these to go down in the next couple of weeks. So, but we're not, again, we're open to everything if the numbers continue to rise. And I know one of the issues for another local district was staffing. And we are seeing, so that's, again, if we have staffing issues because people are catching the virus, that becomes problematic. And, you know, so, yeah, I think everything's on the table for us. The first step was to kind of say that we had hoped this week we'd start to see a decrease, but clearly 2 days in, we're already at the halfway point of what we had for the full week last week, or we're more than halfway there. So at the end of the week, we'll look at it again and have discussions. We met with the principals today, so good weather's coming. So I think naturally we welcome that opportunity. But in regards to lunches and things, again, we'll take it as it comes.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, I think I've been reading reports that, you know, we look at Europe and you see, well, you know, they went through a spike and it came down again. And I feel like we're probably going to follow that same path, and hopefully we're at the height of it and it'll come down again. But let's keep an eye on it. And thanks for all your input and hard work. And I'm sure we'll make an educated decision a week from now. So next item is the school physician.
And again, Patrick, go ahead.
Good transition. Is Dr. O'Shea on the call? Is that correct? Was that going to happen or no? No, okay. So we did have an application, as we know, our current school physician, and I won't get her last name right, but Dr. Cindy Wallenjevitz, thank you, Dr. Conti, for helping me, is no longer going to be in that position next year, and we want to thank her publicly for all of her support, especially through the pandemic. I know, in particular, Barbara Conley, our nurse leader, really appreciated her accessibility and feedback during a lot of, you know, stressful times for all of us. So I want to thank her publicly. But we do have another local physician, Dr. Jennifer O'Shea, who has applied for this, our opening. And one of the biggest things for us, honestly, is having the school physician in place. And if I get the terminology wrong, Barbara will correct me later, but the medical delegation, the ability to delegate medicine, our nurses to do that, we need a doctor to kind of oversee that process. So that's one of the big aspects of having a school physician. And again, when things come up in the future, if we're hopefully not having these discussions as often about the spread of viruses within the building, but certainly we'd reach out to our school physician again as another sounding board along with the Board of Health. So just a little bit of background. Dr. O'Shea is a partner at Greater Lowell Pediatrics. And again, she's a local doctor, and we're just appreciative, given everything that we've been through, that we have somebody willing to step up and serve in this position. So I want to thank her, and I don't know what the process is. This is new to me, but I know Dr. O'Shea met with Barbara Conley. They've talked multiple times just about, Barbara knows the needs better than anybody from a day-to-day basis, and she was very excited to have her move forward.
So Madam Chair, with the district doctor, if there could just be a motion to support the appointment of Dr. O'Shea as the district doctor, then we'll move forward.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, I guess we'll take a vote. Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, 5-0-0.
And if I could add, I just want to thank Dr. O'Shea for stepping up. I seem to believe that this is a somewhat thankless job, and it is a really important one. And so thank you for stepping up, and thank you to whoever found her also.
Okay, thank you. Next is facilities, Dr. Conti, and
Again, thank you. Ms. Kasha has the next couple agenda items. So there's a review of the fiscal year 21 end of year report and engagement. So with that, Nicole?
Sure. So every year, Powers and Sullivan, or whoever our current auditors are, come out to review our end of year report, which is basically every penny that flows through the district in a given year. We have to report back to the state in the horrible format that they've created for us to do so. Powers comes out to verify our compliance with those, with the reporting. And this year for FY21, there were no instances of noncompliance. So I just wanted to bring that forward, because I think a lot of the times we're bringing forward things that need to be fixed. So in this case, I wanted to recognize my staff's efforts and a job well done for no findings on this.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. That's important to know, and that's great. All right.
And not just your staff, but you as well, so thank you.
Yes, yes, as well. All right. The monthly financial update.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Nicole?
Again, this month, all of our revolving funds are in good standing, and there are no current concerns. So if anyone has any questions, I can address them. Other than that, that's all.
Thank you. All righty.
If Mr. Riggs is still on, does he have any comments or questions?
No questions about the revolving accounts.
Okay.
It's surprising to see the balance at the end so much higher than the beginning, but that's always good. If I could get a copy of the auditor's report, that would be appreciated.
Discussion.
I'll send it over. Yes, thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Riggs?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Okay, let's move on to the next item. Fox Hill School Building Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're working our way around the horn, so Mr. Kuna is up. And we have a few things. The school committee needs to accept the Massachusetts School Building Authority feasibility study agreement, but I'll let Bob explain what the process is, and then I will read a motion for you all to vote.
thank you to the chair and Dr. Conti for the introduction. Not sure if it's been publicly noted. I think we, at the last meeting, let everyone know that the MSBA board did vote to accept us into the feasibility study. That does come with some additional paperwork, so we are not officially in yet. Last night, the select board read into their vote and did vote 5-0 to support the feasibility study. I'm asking the school committee tonight to read into and vote on the school committee's need to accept this document into their reading for the feasibility study agreement. And also the town manager has the feasibility study agreement right now with town council, who is reviewing it. And once town council approves that, the town manager will sign that and send that along. And that will officially put us into the feasibility study phase 2 with the MSBA. So we're there. We just have a couple more steps to finish signing before we get into that. So again, Dr. Conti or myself will read into what we need you all to vote into as language, and then I need to continue with some other news in regards to the Fox Hill Building Committee.
And Bob, the date you said is not to be filled in, so it's going to sound awkward because I'm not going to read a date. Is that correct?
No, I confirmed the date that's not being filled in is on the feasibility study, because that's when MSBA will officially attach that. What we're going to put in tonight's date is when you all are reading it into your board. So that is left blank intentionally when MSBA sends it to us, but we will put in tonight's date. The select board put in last night's date when they read that into their record.
So this should be May 10th.
May 10th, correct.
Okay, good, because I didn't know how to leave it blank. Okay, this is for the school committee. It's a motion for support of the select board entering into the Massachusetts School Building Authority feasibility study agreement. And the motion is, I move to support the select board entering into the Massachusetts School Building Authority feasibility study agreement dated May 10th, 2022 for the Fox Hill Elementary School, and to provide written notice of this vote to the select board.
I so move.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, so I will take a vote. Ms. Massardo?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, 500. Okay.
Thank you. At a previous meeting, and again, time coming, now that we have a board vote from the MSBA, we should look to put a SBC School Building Committee on the calendar for another meeting. I will send it out to SBC members as well to confirm some dates, but I'd like to propose some dates to this board, just to check your availability. Between this week and next week, I believe, because of town meeting and other previous engagements, it would not be a good time. So I'm looking at the following week, May 31st, which is a Tuesday, or June 1st, Wednesday. If those don't make sense, we could go further into the calendar, but again, I think this is good news, and I would like to get the committee together to at least discuss future steps, and we also have some housekeeping that we need to do regarding members, outgoing and incoming members into the SBC.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I don't need a vote or an action on that tonight. I'd just like to get some opinions, and then, within the next day or two, I'll look to send out some messages to SBC members. So maybe a discussion would be great.
What were the dates again?
May 31st
May
and June
31st,
1st, Tuesday and Wednesday. And Madam Chair, may I ask Bob a question? I'm assuming this would be a hybrid meeting that's allowed, so again, we would obviously meet in person, but if people wanted to join in a hybrid way we had been doing, we can
Yes.
accommodate that?
We can accommodate that. We'll have the meeting here in the school committee room, and then we can offer it hybrid as well, too, and we'll put that on the invitation.
So you said May 31st?
I'm just proposing dates, so.
Okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to hear them.
May 31st and June 1st are two dates that are Tuesday and Wednesday, where we don't have school committee meetings that week, and my calendar looked free, so.
So I'm available both dates, and I'm, maybe everyone could say.
Yeah, I just checked. It works for me. Either one.
Yeah, I could probably do both. Tuesday would probably be better.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do those 2 dates as well. Just have to move one thing, but then this is more important. Okay.
Mrs. Monaco, I'm not sure.
Mrs. Monaco?
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
And-
can we address the issue of the change, Ms. Mazzardo being a possible new member to the SBC and also a new chair for the SBC?
We can address that tonight as far as a conversation goes, but I have confirmed with the MSBA that actually the SBC, so the school building committee has voting authority now that that committee has been assembled.
Okay.
So we have members on that board that do have voting power. What we would do is at that meeting, we would take a vote to remove a current member and then propose and take a vote to accept a new member in. And then whether or not that new member would have voting rights would also be decided at that time. Then what we need to do is collect that data, update the form, the SBC form, and send that to the MSBA so they have that on record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting everybody know what the process is. Any other?
One other question. Is it then a vote of the SBC to choose the new chair? Is that the way it works?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, through the chair, when we did the memorial in the middle school, we did have people, because it's a multi-year process, start, and then they might have an interest more in the design, and then they would leave, and then someone else would come on. So the building committees tend to expand and contract as the project moves along.
Right. I think the big question is that we have to replace the chair of that committee, so. All right, so let's move on to the BHS update.
Again, thank you. So 2 quick updates I have is, in previous meetings, there was interest from this board, or at least proposed to this board, of creating a standing building committee for the high school. I will share through paper and through Google to you all for maybe a future meeting, but I'm pulled the template from MSBA. I moved any irrelevant or maybe not necessarily MSBA terms, since this would be a local building committee. This would not be an official MSBA committee because we're not in any program or agreement with MSBA right now. So again, we're using their forms, using their template. I'll share that with you all. I did add a few extra spaces if we wanted to write in anything new, and then I think we bring back to this committee either a formal vote or just a recommendation of you all to create that committee in a future date. So like I said, I'll share that with you all and take your feedback anytime.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, I strongly support this because if the renovation does get sort of approved into the grant process from the MSBA, we're going to need to form a building committee anyway, and then we're going to go through the scripted process, 6 months behind the Fox Hill. So that'll be very familiar to you. But if we don't, what we heard at town meeting last night is we're going to have to sort of attack the high school over a 10-year period. We'll probably have several large projects like the HVAC system and the science labs that would require sort of significant funding and bonding. But more than likely, there's going to be warrant articles every year on projects that, individual projects that we can accomplish at the high school. And I think if there's a standing building committee moving those projects forward, it would seem much more connected to the overall high school renovation. So I think it would just make more sense. So again, I appreciate that. Bob, thanks for putting that together, and we'll certainly be asking for community representation on that committee. And again, I think because it is local, there will be a lot less structure, but we would really plan on using some of our free cash over the next several years on high school projects and obviously on Pine Glen projects because the committee is committed to a 4 elementary school option. So I just wanted to voice my support for a high school building committee.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah. Does anyone have a hand up or?
No, I just wanted to add one more thing to the high school, if I may, through the chair. I'm going to share a document on the screen just so you all can see. I think that Dr. Conti set up the perfect segue with the discussions happening at town meeting and some of the projects that, that we have found through the feasibility study for the high school. I know in recent conversations, the feasibility study for the high school hasn't been at the forefront, but coming up tomorrow and in future conversations, it's definitely going to be there. So in particular, you know, we're working with our architect right now. Yes, it's late, we know that, but they did provide us with a letter that we are sharing with town meeting members. That's what I'm showing on the board right now. So there's some recommendations, like I said, that are accessibility issues addressed in the feasibility study, which will have to be addressed moving forward if we are going to work on the high school, especially if we hit that 30% rule. If we are not working on the high school, we still have issues with this building that we need to address, so maybe attacking them while they're still large dollar items, but attacking them smaller and consistently over time may fit very well into the town's schedule for funding. So either way, we still want to keep looking at these and addressing these. Yes, I will try to get these a lot faster, these recommendations, these letters. But again, this is definitely something that we will see more often, the need to really address accessibility issues and just, again, issues with the high school in general, 50-plus-year-old building, so.
Can you send us a copy of that,
I will.
please?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have a question? Ms. Massaro?
I spoke to Dr. Conti about this too. Like, I think the issue with capital budget and town meeting seems to be that we don't appear to have like a prioritized punch list for the high school. Like, I know it's in the giant feasibility study, but is that something we could look at putting together so that it's a little bit more obvious? Like, it will be completely obvious what we'll ask for next year and in 2024 and things like that. I think that will help all of us get credibility and more folks understand that we're trying to chip away at things that the high school needs.
I think that's a perfect question, and I do support it, and yes. Given the fact that the feasibility study took longer than expected, I don't believe that this is necessarily a rush project. It's something that we may have been aware of or had been requested from us internally in the high school for a long period of time. But I think now that we have the feasibility study, we will systematically be able to go down and look at not only the bigger ticket items, but the more pressing issues, whether it's a safety concern or accessibility issue, and then as a collective board, be able to decide the priorities of those. So yes.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else have a question or a comment? Mrs. Monaco, I can't see anything on the screen, so. Are you all set?
She does not have a hand raised.
Okay, just double checking.
I guess I do. I can't remember. I thought I had read that there was now a feasibility report available. Is that the letter, or is it also available, and where would we get it?
It's too large for me to send on email,
Okay.
so I can share it in Google Drive with you.
Okay.
And that would be the easiest place for you to assess it or access it.
Thank you. Next item is the safe routes to school, and I think you have an update, Mr. Kuna?
I do. Again, this one is today update, so I'm gonna have to look at some of my notes, make sure I'm saying correctly. Judy Crocker from Safe Routes to School and her team did come out and complete Fox Hill. I think you were aware of that at a previous meeting. Recently, they were at Memorial to complete a dismissal and observation, an arrival and dismissal observation. That has been completed, but we have not gotten a report back yet. We are still looking to schedule a time for the middle school to complete a arrival and dismissal observation as well. I guess with your permission, I don't know that I need a vote on it, but I'll gladly take one or at least have a conversation. We'd like to put the 2-week survey available to parents up on the website starting Monday the 16th. That was a recommendation and a conversation I had with Ms. Crocker today. If not, we could obviously push it off. The following Monday would be the 29th, or at your discretion, whenever you choose to. The sooner the better, in my opinion. And then, like I said, that would be up for 2 weeks. I myself would ask principals in any weekly communications to mention that as well too, and provide the link to parents. And then I'm sure I would ask Dr. Conti, Mr. Larkin, and Mr. Porch, any communications that are going out in the weekly updates to include that as well. Like I said, that's a predefined survey, which I do have available here. We cannot change the questions. Again, this is from Safe Routes to School. And like I said, with your permission, we would start that as early as Monday the 16th.
Yeah, I appreciate, I don't think we have to take a vote on that, do we, doing the survey? Doesn't, do you know? I don't think so. I know, I would like to get it out as soon as possible as well. I don't want to wait till the end of the month, and so we might as well, make that announcement and get the survey out. And then I think we can probably, I know we all had the question that we wanted to add, and I don't know if there's a way that we can get the answer to that question and why you're driving your students to school. I don't know if we can add a separate question in an email or how we can gather that data on our own, but we have to maybe get clever on that and sneak it in somewhere. But I think that's important to know.
Yeah, I think the key word is that we would have to gather that data,
Right.
and that's not data that Safe Routes to School is looking to collect on their survey.
Right,
So,
right. So we have to find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions on that survey at all? Can we get a copy of the full survey? I know we got bits and pieces of it, but I don't think we had the whole question. Okay,
I'll send that.
thank you.
I'm in support of that soon as possible, too, I think.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I also do support putting out the survey whenever you're ready. And if we're done with that, I wanted to add something else about Safe Routes to School.
okay.
So I don't know if anyone else had any other comments.
No.
But I wanted to thank all of the people, and I know Ms. Massardo was an important part of making walk, bike, and roll to school an incredible success with the bike racks full and parents and kids meeting each other out in the street. And I have heard about things like that for a number of years since I've been on the school committee, when I've gone to conferences and heard about other towns. And I didn't have the connections to talk to parents and see whether it could be happen, but you made it happen, and everyone who did make it happen, I'm delighted, and I hope that we'll be able to do a lot more of that going forward, whether it's for health reasons, whether it's for, any kind of reasons. I think it's important. The aside, of course, is we want to keep building more sidewalks so that it is safe, but it obviously can be done, and I'm really just delighted that that happened, so.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Let's go.
Chair, if no, sorry.
yeah, sorry.
If I could just add one more thing. At the next meeting, I'm going to ask either Dr. Conti or Terry to put on the agenda for a first reading, and again, up to the school committee to decide, but Safe Routes to School has recommended policy language for the school committee to adopt. It's MASC Partnered Wellness, Active Transportation, and Amendments. So I will provide you that. It'll be in the packet for next week. If there's room on the agenda, we would be seeking a first reading. And then again, we don't really have an opportunity to change the language, but if the school committee did choose to actively adopt that, that would also be highly recommended for Safe Routes to School. So,
Thank you. All right. All right, the next item is new business.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. These are really school committee agenda items, so I will leave it to you all.
All right. So I know, Mr. Foss, you had actually brought this next one up, and I didn't know if you want to go ahead and.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time. I got a couple requests, and I think that it is a good idea to include some of the, whatever materials that we are able to include, along with the agenda that we release publicly. And I think it would allow for better understanding for people watching that some of the backup material that we discuss but they cannot see or read, it might be in everyone's best interest to provide some of that stuff. And I realize, Dr. Conti, you mentioned that some of it is in draft form or is not publicly available yet, but I just wanted to see what everyone thought, if it's logistically possible. I'm not trying to make more work for anyone, because I know that everyone is overworked, but I think that some of the materials that we see but others do not, it leads to, in some cases, confusion or misinformation, and if the material was in front of everyone's eyes, again, it would be a benefit for everyone.
So I guess, Mr. Foss, what I would say is it depends, and I know that's a frustrating answer.
No, but I get
So
it.
let's use as an example the Dyslexia Guideline conversation tonight. That was public information. The presentation was done ahead of time. I have no problem linking that to an agenda, so if someone wanted to print it out or follow it or do whatever, we are showing it on the screens, but if someone wanted a paper copy, you're seeing that at the same time. Someone in the public could be seeing it, or they could see it ahead of time. Like I said, I don't really have a problem with that. If there's a policy reading, if there's information that's not public, that becomes public when it is delivered to you all, then I guess I would make that distinction. So what would that be? Maybe a first reading of a policy, maybe something like that. So I think we can look for information and materials that we have ahead of time and try to go through that. And honestly, there's some things that come together very last minute. And so it's not because we don't want to share it, but we are still working on it up until right before the meeting starts. So we can, but I'm saying we can certainly look to do that, and maybe we can try it and see how we do and get feedback from the committee on, maybe there are some items you said, boy, this could have really been done ahead of time, or why did you do that? And we can kind of find our way a little bit if that's a way to go about doing it.
No, I mean, I think that similar to, we'd use the phrase work in progress when we're talking about the handbook. As we go through, I think that we'll find that some is easier or better, or I appreciate your willingness to try it, so thank you.
So, Ms.
Can I
Massaro?
say, I think there's also like upload to WebEx functionality too, right? You're saying it becomes public when you present to us. So could it be shared through the WebEx at the same time? Maybe. I know we do that in Microsoft Teams. Like you could share the document that way, I think. Because if they come here, they can sometimes get like the paper documents, right?
Sure.
So I think that may help too.
Agreed. I mean, again, there's ways to post some of those. And like I said, I think, as you had mentioned, having a link so people can look at them when we upload the agenda initially, so people can follow along. It's not a bad idea, so that, it's full disclosure, I guess you could say these days. So again, appreciate Dr. Conti, and I hope it's not going to create too much extra work. Hopefully no one gets mad at us if the links don't work, because we did have an issue. We tried to use links this week, and we had a problem with that. But we'll get to figure out how to make those work in the future. So again, thank you for the suggestion. So we'll go ahead and move on to the Ms. Simon.
This issue did come up a couple of years ago, and there wasn't much interest in pursuing it. And I guess, I know other public bodies do this, so there was a question about, is it legal if it's not our policy, and what will happen to it? And I'm assuming, Dr. Conti, that you'll be able to, find out from other towns or other school committees and, how they do it, if it needs to have draft written across it so that people don't share. I think one of the biggest concerns was if we have a proposed policy and somebody takes it off the draft without it saying it's a draft, and saying, look what they're doing, that we want to be careful, and that was the biggest concern. But I do think it's important, because it is really hard for people who are trying to follow us to do it, and you've heard me read sections of things that people didn't have. So I assume that you'll be able to look at it. Now, I like the idea that we'll be trying to do it, and trying things and seeing what works, too.
Yeah, and I'll give you feedback as well. If it's a complete headache or, untenable or something, I'll make sure to state that. But, I think for some of the things, it'll be relatively straightforward. It's just things come together. It depends how they come together. So that's all. And we're really trying to watch agenda lengths as well, so to make sure that we don't go too late. So I think that may help too. So
Sure.
so we can figure that out.
Thank you. The next item is the Massachusetts Fair Share. And I know I was looking at what that meant, and it is in relation to the Massachusetts Income Tax for Education and Transportation Amendment. And I believe, Mr. Foss, you wanted to have some discussion on that.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And it was brought up to me, and I've been reading more about it, but the Mass Fair Share is a proposed amendment that's going to be on the ballot in November, on the state ballot in November. And what it's going to do is add a 4% surcharge to any income over $1 million. And that money will be earmarked for transportation and education. And some of the estimates are close to $2 billion in revenue that might filter its way down into Burlington. And so my point is that I'm not sure what the committee's position or what the committee's willingness to take a position on a political issue like this is, but I wanted to bring it up and just have a discussion and see if we wanted to, as a committee, support it.
I can read just from the site. A yes vote supports amending the state constitution to create an additional income tax of 4% for income over $1 million in addition to existing 5% flat rate income tax, and dedicate revenue to education and transportation purposes. A no vote opposes amending the state constitution to create an additional income tax of 4% to income over $1 million, thereby maintaining the existing flat rate income tax of 5% with revenue dedicated to the state's general fund. So, I don't know if anyone wants to add any, have any questions or want to discuss it at all. Ms. Simon?
I'm very much in favor of this, and I would be interested in our board taking a vote if we felt that we supported it. I think that it's a part of everyone contributing their fair share. I know one argument has been that people who make over $1 million are contributing more, but they are not contributing more percentage-wise. And I think that it's, we all benefit from the public domain, and we all need, to support a lot of services in the education and transportation area. And so I do support it personally, and if the board were so inclined, I would like to take a vote to support it as well. I know there's also discussion at the State House about modifying some other kinds of taxes on millionaires and on other regular people that might be more appropriate, I think. But I think this is an important step toward, as we always say, our budgets are our values, and I think if our value is to support education and have transportation and to reduce some of our reliance in various ways, that it's an important thing for us to support.
Any other committee members have any comments? I don't know if we, can we wait till another meeting and mull over it a little bit? Maybe discuss it at the next meeting if we want to take a vote.
We got invited to something talking about it too, right?
There is a, sorry, through the
Yes,
chair, there is a forum in Lexington, and I'm just going to scroll in my email for the date. On May 17th, it's a Tuesday, and panelists will include Jay Kaufman, Michelle Ciccolo, Ken Gordon, Nina Hackle. And so if anyone is so inclined, there is more information available there. And there is a hand, Ms.
It looks like though it's only in person. I didn't see a web that you could attend in any other way. And you have to RSVP through the link?
Sure.
Right, okay. So maybe we'll wait until after, that meeting to discuss it. That way, anyone who's able to attend, we have a little more information. And some, Ms. Monaco?
Yes, I'd like to know from Darren Klein if it's appropriate for our board to take a vote on something like this before we go too far into it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for entertaining the discussion.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. All right, we've gotten through all of our normal school committee items. We do have a need for executive session.
Before we go into executive session, I'd just like to, I'm aware that this Friday is, I believe, is the junior-senior prom. And since our student representative wasn't here, she didn't mention it, but I think this is the first regular prom we've had since COVID, and I just want to wish all the students a safe and fun evening, and I hope all the events for the seniors go well for the next several weeks.
Thank you for bringing that up. So as I was saying, we have a need to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the collective bargaining, and an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school district, and the chair so declares, BEA Teachers Union. The school committee will only return to the public session for the purpose of adjournment. And I'd like to take I guess we're going to go ahead and move into executive session. Do I need to vote on that? Roll call. I thought so.
I move, need
yes.
a motion, right?
What? Yes,
Need a mo-
please.
I move that
motion.
I move that we go into executive session.
Is there a
Second.
All right.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you. We are now in executive session.